Let me just rewind here really quick because somebody's like, okay, so where is this coming from? Did you invent it? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It turns out why people, have been sleeping, that a lot of the knowledge here about occultism specifically comes from an angel or a planet, in this case, called Shukra. Okay. And this planet or this angel or this energy of Shukra was basically the one who took the knowledge from on high, if you may, or the heavenly knowledge, and brought it to man. So this is also Prometheus, who's also Venus, who's also even Lucifer, and all the rest of the terms that they put around all of this, the light bringer and all this. But what it's about is taking the knowledge of how the heavens work and bringing it to the earth. So that's why they said that, oh, wow, this angel taught men and women the sacred arts of heaven, right? And then they go on to cursing man and woman from there. But it's very simple that there's a knowledge about how time moves. And that's why Venus traces out a concave pentagram in the sky over a series of time. And that time has also a lot to do with a specific shape. That shape has to do with the geometry called phi. And we find that things that are on the planet have a tendency to be created within that set of geometry. Just as you would see a sand dollar, just as you would see a flower with 5 petals, that there's a specific geometry, and that geometry is seen to be very godlike, okay? So when they start breaking down that knowledge, that became astrology. So the people who were teaching, the beings that were teaching this knowledge were teaching this knowledge in what you would call the ancient Orient. You would call it Persia in those times, or even before then. You call them now the Hindus. They had already been passing this knowledge on continuously. Who knows who the original being was that came and brought it? They say Venus was the original being that brought it. But after that point, it was passed throughout the ages through gurus that had this knowledge through symbolism, geometry, and certain levels of knowledge about how a person's temperament would be if they're born under certain astrological signs. And why many have been like trying to authenticate if astrology is or astronomy is real or not and how it works, it's very simple that the conception point of when you come into play, which is actually when your parents come together, it opens up a vacuum in itself in what you would call space, and a certain amount or a certain type of dust, depending on what's going on in that moment. That's why it says that man is from the dust. But they're not talking about the dust like the dust in your house. They're talking about the periodic table. The periodic table is the dust. So when the vacuum opens up at that particular moment, when you're coming into conception, it sucks in that cosmic dust or those elements in that increment, because every day there's a different increment. The periodic table is what's really moving. Like there could be more mercury, there could be more of more ruthenium, more cobalt, and those variants is what creates the differences within us. But that moment when the vacuum is open is when it sucks in all of that, and that becomes your composition. And so through that, there became this knowledge of seeing, well, if a person had this kind of composition, their temperament is going to be like this. They're going to be more adverse to this. And they just went, as they say, went ham on it. They just start writing out all of these correspondences because they were able to then line up how human beings connect into what's going on in the world. Okay. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. What we did was then say, okay, well, how can we modernize this knowledge? Also, you'll notice that Cornelius Agrippa, who was clearly one of the most enigmatic occultists of his time, wrote in 3 volumes of books trying to do this exact thing, which was trying to find correspondences within all of nature's elements. I don't think his work was anywhere near as refined as this work, but then this work for sure predates his work.